Hi, this is Doug Moench, and you're listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast.
Welcome back, Loony listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast. This is episode 306, and you are with your High Priest of Khonshu, Ray. G'day. And joining me for this awesome time to chat some classic comics is none other than uber valued Patroony, so Patreon member for the show, dead set, head to toe Moon Knight fan, and creator of Fringe Knight, Daniel Doing. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Oh, you're talking about me. I thought you were talking about somebody cool there for a second.
No, that's you, fine sir. That's you.
Ray, making up all this fun stuff about me. Oh, you're gonna get me swarmed by the paparazzi here.
Well, listeners know that. Well, listeners would have heard Daniel's name mentioned literally, I think, every episode. Daniel's one of the top tier Patroonies. Creator of the independent comic book Fringe Knight, which we'll get to details and shout outs Daniel as well. You can definitely let Loonies know the current status of things. I know you and I were talking just before we went on air about some like prototype merch, that sort of stuff for Fringe Knight, so that's very exciting. But yeah, no, it's great to have Daniel here, and Daniel has joined us to Up in the Night Sky. It's a waxing crescent as we record, which means it's a LUNAR-PICK classic run review, and so Daniel and I will be looking at Moon Knight Volume 1, Issue 22 by the GOAT, Team GOAT, Doug Moench and Bill Sienkiewicz. Before we start as well, of course, a huge thank you to all our Patroonies, such as Daniel. Thanks for sticking by us. We've had a rip-roaring ride this year. This year's been wild, Daniel, for Moon Knight.
Totally.
Oh my God, it seems like forever, like ages ago, but it was this year, April, that the show dropped, and then we had, all the episodes. We've got a current series. We've got had an anthology series. All the merch, there you go. For those that can see the video, Patroonies, Daniel putting up the Disney Plus Moon Knight Hasbro Legends figure there. It's a very beautiful, articulated figure. But a big thank you
very well detailed. Very well detailed.
Oh, and you and I both. Well, actually, you more so. I know a lot more experienced with action figures and collecting them and making them. So,
not to shoot my own horn there, but I do a bit of kit bashing here and there,
But a huge thank you to everyone for helping out with the show. A big shout out to our principal sponsors: Odin Sword, Drew Toombs, Daniel Doing, the gentleman right here, and Frank the Think Tank. He was on the show a couple of episodes ago. A couple of other sponsors: CLZ Comics for your database needs, and Dreamland Comics from Schaumburg, Illinois. Daniel, what's been doing? It's been ages. We've had a little bit of a chin wag before we kickstarted this episode, but you've been saying work's been pretty busy. I think last I have seen of you or of Fringe Knight have been the posts on the social media platforms about your appearances at cons and stuff. How was that all?
Absolutely fantastic. Got to meet a lot of really cool people. I got to meet a lot of other independent creators who, one of which said they were actually inspired by me to write their own zombie apocalypse comic.
Cool.
So
that's great. To know that you've actually influenced someone is pretty flattering, I'd imagine.
Oh, I still can't believe it. I still think they're fibbing, but hey, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth.
But yeah, I mean, like, what was the experience like at the con and all that? It's, we're talking about post-COVID world, and I don't know. I mean, I don't go to that. Number one, we don't have that many conventions here in Australia. We just had one a couple of weeks ago. I totally missed it. But yeah, how is it like there? Are people still wary? I do speak to Saren, my co-host from To Know Her Is To Fear Her. She was going to New York Comic Con as well, and she was giving me the lowdown of how things are. But is it? Do you feel claustrophobic in there? Or...
It all depends on the convention, on the organizers, and how they do the layouts. The one that I did was actually in Erie, PA, which my book is based in, so that's always very nice to help promote. And the convention center they had it at, was right along the coast where Lake Erie is. Mm-hmm. And it's a beautiful setting, and it's a very nice sized convention hall. And they even put a few more like booths in this year, but it did not feel claustrophobic. Like they had a nice flow to it. It wasn't like a big con like New York Comic Con or anything like that, but you really felt like you were getting your money's worth with what was there. Mm-hmm. And they had like the fantastic section where they had these master Lego builders there and like building all sorts of crazy stuff that I couldn't even imagine building even when I was like 5 years old. I'm like, oh, how are they doing this? This is witchcraft.
That's probably answered my next question. I was about to say, and it's putting you probably on the spot, but I'll make it a bit more general. I guess what was the most surprising thing for you? I was going to originally ask when you had your stall over there and anything that happened, any anecdote that happened while you were there, but I guess branching out, I mean, from the whole con, what was the thing that kind of really stood out in your mind that kind of really surprised you?
Honestly, the sheer number of people that actually came to the convention, because that was one of like whenever you do a convention, especially like you said in a post-COVID world, mm-hmm. you're so worried that the event organizers are going to be real sphincters, like, well, you have to wear a mask, you have to stay 6 feet apart, you have to sanitize your hand at every booth that you go to. They were not that strict. And honestly, they were like, look, if you feel like you got the sniffles, wear a mask. If you feel fine, you don't have to wear a mask, which was very nice. And just even for a Friday, because usually the rule of thumb with conventions is Friday, you're probably going to break even, but don't expect it. Saturday is going to be your big day, and then Sunday is going to be your wind down day. That was not the case. It was boom, right off the tarmac from the get-go on Friday. Just I pretty much was in the plus.
That's great.
By Friday.
That's great. And you still had Saturday to come, and yeah.
Oh, yeah. And Saturday was absolutely astonishing. And even Sunday was very good as well. Because I went with about 200 copies of issues 1 through 6. Mm-hmm. I came home with about less than 20 copies.
Wow. Yep. And just on that as well, so you mentioned 1 to 6. I know 6 being the latest one out. I have seen some artwork bandied about on the social media platforms as well. You did mention, I think, also of potentially remastering, reissuing issue 1. Was that still on the cards? Yeah.
Yes, actually.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing a lot of looking at just the flow of the books and everything. And when I first did issue 1, it was a little rushed. I was still kind of cutting my teeth into the whole format of actually making a comic book. Mm-hmm. And I did it in black and white because I kind of wanted to have like that sort of like Universal monster aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
But now that I've gotten going into it, I'm like, I want to see stuff in color. I want to see color in my comic. So I'm actually working with my current artist, Javier Lugo, who's an incredibly talented individual. And we're actually remastering issue 1, and I'm going to be looking at launching a Kickstarter for it about the beginning of next year. we're still kind of getting through all the pencils and everything, getting everything organized, and then I'm hoping around Christmas time I'll get this bad boy launched.
So there'll be like significant like reworkings for artwork as well, or
Yep, the whole book is going to get completely remastered.
Oh wow, awesome.
It's going to go up to a 32-page format.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be in color, and I'm going to include a bunch of like nice little, like kind of behind the scenes special features
mm-hmm.
in the back of the book, and also with our Kickstarter, and also for our Patroonies, since I myself am a Patroony man myself.
Yeah,
I'm going to be including about 3 different 11x17 posters just for Patroonies, because once.
Nice.
We get this book going. All of my Patroonies who have been with me through this journey on Fringe Knight, they are getting special edition number 1 that's remastered,
that's awesome.
Along with a poster, and they will be getting a special 4-inch little Fringe Knight bust that I'm working on in prototype right now.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. That's great. I mean, because I know you and I talked about. We talked about various types of merchandise that could be kind of done, and there are the kind of, I guess, general ones that people, stickers and all that as well. But like, to try and find something slightly different and kind of niche and special and exclusive, I think is pretty cool. So that's sounding great. And Looney's. More details to come. Obviously, when we'll give some details. I mean, I'll even just shout it now. It's in the show notes of where you can support Daniel. But I might, with that Kickstarter, Daniel, I don't know how far away it is, but whenever it is, or if it's available, a link for it now, I'll add it into the show notes too.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely send you a link once. I'm still getting everything set up with it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was unfamiliar with the timing, but rest assured, Looney's definitely, it's worth checking out. And this remastered issue 1, issue 6, it's going to be Daniel's chugging along. So Fringe Knights, the story's building, the characters are developing. It's awesome. It's awesome to be part of. Anyway, so we also have a little bit, Daniel, again, of white noise. Moon Knight news, only a little, and we did touch upon it again before we hit the record button. Crypt of Shadows released this week past for those who went to their comic book store, their LCSs. I just wanted to put it to you, Daniel, if you had read it or not. I myself have it on my pile. I haven't been able to get there. I got there. When did I last get there? Last weekend. So it's very hard to get there during the week on the Wednesday. So I generally end up reading stuff on the weekend. But yeah, how about you?
It is currently waiting for me in my pull list. Like you said, just work's been crazy. And I've got like a stack this thick of books that I need to get through.
It's a really weird thing to juggle because, as comic book fans like you and I and everyone kind of listening, it's fun to read through a whole lot of different stories. There is a fine line between when the stack gets too high and it starts to get like a little bit overwhelming and a little bit, oh God, I've got to play catch up now because, I'm way too far behind. And then you don't have that time to relax and just kind of absorb everything. But hopefully, Daniel, that stack will be kind of minimized over the next couple of days.
Just looking there, you're like, my God, what have I done?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it happens with me as well. Like, say, for instance, just more recently, and this is not huge, but amongst other issues, I was like 2 issues behind on Ant-Man. I'm collecting the current Ant-Man by Al Ewing, I think it is. And that's been pretty fun. It's about because it's his anniversary apparently, and so it features all the Ant-Men, Scott Lang, Eric O'Grady, Hank Pym. But anyway, I was like 2 issues behind, and it's kind of like you don't want to be any more than 2 issues behind, otherwise you're really playing catch up, So, so managed to kind of, I'm on track now, so that's good. Yes. So Crypt of Shadows, it has come out. I have seen a few things out. I believe it's on Discord. Some people in the Off Topic, I think, channel have put in some panels. Looks pretty cool, Daniel, from what I've seen. A lot of Elsa Bloodstone. You know, the book had me at Moon Knight, but it also had me at Elsa as well. She's just awesome. And I'm not saying that. I'm not jumping on the bandwagon because she's in Werewolf by Night in D+. You know, I'm talking about, you know, back in Next Wave phase and all that when she kind of featured. She's always been good. Look, just a really. I know there are a lot of characters that are sassy, Daniel, but
she is by far the sassiest.
Yeah, something about a monster hunter, a British monster hunter with a big gun and just a thick English accent, you know, and a bit of sass. It just, you know, that's it.
It's all the right check boxes.
It does. So I can't really recommend or suggest for you loonies whether to get it, other than if you are a completist. Moon Knight is on the cover, and I'm assuming he's inside the book somewhere too.
Somewhere in there, he's hidden. You gotta look for him. It's like, where's Waldo?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you gotta earn your Moony loony status. So, anyway, Daniel, we are here, of course, as mentioned at the top of the show, for a LUNAR-PICK. It is a classic run review. I love doing these things. It's going back to the old, I think it was 1982, but I do have some details here, some credits, Daniel. I'm hoping you'd like to share with the fair loonies about what we're about to do.
Oof. Well, I think we're about to deep dive into some classic Moon Knight awesomeness.
Yes, exactly. Yes, more notably, Moon Knight, Volume 1, Issue 22. It's called The Dream Demon. And again, Daniel, I prefer it when writers, this might be very obvious, but when writers give titles to their issues, not calling out anyone, maybe I am when let's just call him Bendis, but when they don't have titles to their issues, I much prefer it because it's episodic, right? And
yeah,
I want to refer to something other than there's issue 22. You know, this is the Dream Demon. This is the story of the Dream Demon. Writer Doug Moench, penciler Bill Sienkiewicz, and inks as well, of course. Colorist Christie Scheele, letterer Mike Higgins, and editor Denny O'Neil. Now, there is also a backup story to this. It's the second and what I believe, and please loonies correct me if I'm wrong, the last Tales of Khonshu. Now, we covered the first story, in the last time we did a LUNAR-PICK classic run review, and it had these are little backup stories where Khonshu has some influence, or you know he goes out without Moon Knight to effect justice somewhere. So this was called Moon over Alamein, and writer Alan Zelenetz, penciler Greg LaRocque, inker Joe Albelo, colorist Christie Scheele, letterer Rick Parker, and editor again Denny O'Neil. Release date was May the 4th, 1982, and cover date August of 1982. And this is currently I say available because you can get it elsewhere in floppy format. I'm sure you can pick it up in some bins, bargain bins, that is. Digital versions on, I guess, Kindle. They do that now, or Comixology back in the day. And, of course, then that also means Marvel Unlimited. I read it earlier tonight on the Volume 2 Epic Collection of Moon Knight, Shadows of the Moon. But it is also featured in the Omnibus, the second Omnibus of Volume 2, which, Daniel, did you read it from there?
Which I have. Not to...
Yes.
Yeah, now shoot my own horn.
It is a beautiful omnibus. We're so blessed, Daniel. We're talking before. I mean, there are 3 Moon Knight omnibuses now in the space of how many years, and there's a 4th one coming next year. So we'll have 4 omnibuy of Moon Knight. That's just crazy,
right? Especially the Mark Spector run, because that is so hard to find in anything other than floppy. Like, they don't even have it on Marvel Unlimited last I looked.
No, they didn't. I wrote to Marvel Unlimited back in the day saying, I hear...
Where's Mark Spector? Give him to us now.
No, because I can't remember who told me, they just write in, and they're actually quite receptive and responsive. So I sent something in just saying, oh, look, hey, I just noticed that, I think there were like, the Acts of Vengeance, Mark Spector, Moon Knight's there, and I just said, look, it's just missing, there are a few holes in it, would you be able to maybe upload more Mark Spector, Moon Knight? Unfortunately, it fell on deaf ears, but now we have the Omnibus coming out next year, and currently now, I think Volume 4 of the Epic Collection starts to collect Mark Spector.
Yep.
Oh God, what is it called? I'm gonna Butcher's Moon. It's called the Epic Collection.
Yes,
the latest Moon Knight Epic Collection. Yeah. So. So Loony's plenty of places to be able to read this. You have no excuse, as Daniel and I thrive on this discussion that is going to come up ahead. Now, Daniel, I'm not sure whether you do have handy. I can read the synopses for these two, very short, and courtesy of Wiki and Comic Vine. And again, for people who have the video, Daniel has grown another head, which is totally fine. I'm just going to professionally carry on. No. This is par for the course for any ITK, I guess, hosts cats. So Daniel's cat. What's the name of the one of them? Yeah, what's the name of this little fella?
I believe this is Kodiak Jack, who is the big baby, because he's the youngest male. So he thinks he can just do whatever he wants. And Kodiak most of the time...
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, his older brother is named Christopher T. Bears.
Christopher T. Bears. My gosh. That's cool. He sounds very, very aloof. Maybe wealthy?
Oh, he's a big boy. I call him Grizz for short, because he's a great big boy. Just like his father.
Ah.
Yeah, who was named Meathead.
Oh, okay. A less, less glamorous name.
Well, I mean, his full name is Meathead G. Muscleton, so,
Oh, okay. Fine.
Because he's one of those cats
corrected.
who look at him, like, he looks like he has no neck. He's just...
Yep.
No.
Hard, yeah, that's, I'm not going to go there. There were a couple of references to English cricketers, but I understand. I'm working a different crowd here, so let's keep it there. Well, anyway, so we've got a couple of synopses here. Loonies who haven't kind of ventured into ITK waters before, what Daniel and I will do, we'll go through a bare bones, which is a synopsis. This is I didn't have time to write one myself, so this is off Wikipedia and Comic Vine. We'll go through our overall impressions, and then Daniel and I will start to talk about, I guess, key aspects of this issue, which features Morpheus. Awesome. He's back, baby.
Yes.
Arguably, and please note, Loonies, I say arguably the best Moon Knight villain. I'm not here to say he is or is not, but I just know that a lot of people love him, so... I'm just waving.
I think he's the only one that's like a mutate that Mark has ever fought, I think. Because like everybody else, like Black Spectre, Midnight Man, Bushman, they're just basically schmucks with a gimmick.
Yeah. You're talking about the classic villains, right? Because later on the Beam. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. Morpheus stuck out of the crowd, and I'm not talking about his grotesque looks. He was markedly different from everyone else
because
he actually could inflict potential damage. Yeah. So Morpheus. So anyway. Loonies, we'll go through that. We'll go through some key aspects, and we'll cap it off with a moon rating based off Khonshu's rating system. Of course, thank you, Khonshu, as always.
Press
Khonshu. So, anyway, here is the synopsis for issue 22 for the Dream Demon. First off. The The doctors in charge of Morpheus start treating him with norepinephrine in hopes that inducing dreams will calm his mind, but it instead increases the reach of his ebon energies. Morpheus uses his power to possess Peter Alraune through his dreams, who in turn stalks Moon Knight and attacks him with waking nightmares. So that was the main story, issue 22, and then we have the backup, which was Tales of Khonshu, Moon over Alamein, I'm going to say. The Allied forces are in Africa planning their assault on Rommel's tank division. The way is treacherous and pocked with landmines. Will Khonshu give his aid to the Allies or let the Axis be triumphant? So more of a historical, almost like a war tale.
Almost kind of like a Sergeant Rock kind of tale,
yes. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. So, very interesting. I do have some questions. I'm not sure if you're really into military history, Daniel, are you? Or?
I'm a nice broad knowledge of it. I'm a little bit more knowledgeable of like World War I than World War II, but okay. I know my basics.
Okay, no, that's good. I mean, I only mentioned that as well, and I totally, acknowledge that you do know that stuff. One of the other loonies, though, Geronimo Johnson, I know he is a massive military fan. So shout out to you, Josh. If you know anything more on, and please correct me if I've misspelt that. I'm assuming I misread it. I'm assuming Alamein was some sort of significant historical battle between the Allies and the Axis. So,
the Axis.
So
the Axis of evilness.
Yeah. Anyway, I've got a question. Anyway, we'll get to that. Overall impressions. Daniel, what did you make of? Let's kind of stick, I guess, to the main story, and I guess we can just briefly talk about Tales of Khonshu. I'm not too fussed, unless you want to get into that.
I am down to clown, my friend. I am down to clown.
Okay, fair enough. But overall impressions on the Dream Demon. What did you make of this tale? And just for our video Patroonies, I'm going to add that up there. Yep.
What? Mark Spector, Jake Lockley, and Stephen Grant. Oh.
Yeah, but what did you enjoy this issue?
Yes, for a second outing for Morpheus, I like how they changed up the formula. It wasn't like that sort of like Inspector Gadget, like Doctor, like next time, Moon Knight, next time. No, he was very subtle. He really delved into the whole, like, kind of like, because I think this guy actually came out before Freddy Krueger ever showed up, because I think Freddy Krueger first appeared on screens in like 1984. So I think Morpheus predates him. And here you had Moon Knight literally fighting the proto Freddy Krueger, basically, a guy who manipulates people through their dreams.
Yep. That was exactly what I was going through. What was going through my head when I was reading this is like, this is so cool. I couldn't peg exactly when Freddy Krueger, but I reckon you're about right. I think it's about 84, maybe 85. I mean, this is 82, so I don't think Nightmare on Elm Street was that early. So yeah, exactly. I mean, there are a few tweaks as well, like jumping ahead a little. Peter Alraune, it was a weird kind of puppeteer kind of relationship. So we get a huge explanation at the end from Morpheus to basically wrap things up. And let me see if I can just dash through here. If you are, susceptible to flashing lights, please look away. So there's towards the end here, Morpheus explains everything, which is I found really weird. I mean, overall, before we get into details, I really enjoyed this. It was so much fun to get back into this, and to have Morpheus, one of my favorite villains, I've got to say, be front and center. As you said, it was treated differently. It's not just like he's mulling around in prison. He's in a coma essentially. He's not
Yeah,
doing it. Yeah, he's
like
not
the
doing it.
body is
Yeah.
immobile, but he's like in his brain just pacing back and forth through the
Yeah.
dreamscape going, okay, how am I going to mess up Moon Knight and Dr. Alraune this time?
Well, it's due to the incompetence of the staff, right? Of them administering, and I'm going to butcher it again, norepinephrine. Norepinephrine. Yep, that's it.
Sounds good to me.
Say it as quickly as you can, Daniel. Quickly, say it again. Norepinephrine. There you go.
No, blah, blah, blah.
You probably said it exactly right. Anyway, it's because they bungled it, because they were pumping him with that to keep him comatose, but that actually apparently was feeding his ebon energies. So that was, I thought that was really cool. But anyway, going back to the point that we find out it was Peter Alraune who actually was able. It says here as well. Basically, he was saying that Alraune was able to manipulate people's dreams. It wasn't Morpheus, I don't think.
Yeah, it was like his connection to Morpheus gave him his own set of dream powers. And it's funny because it kind of reminds me of Wrecker with the Wrecking Crew. Because he had his enchanted crowbar, and then he had these other three schmoes come in, and they all kind of got their own power set in the same realm as Wrecker, but significantly different. I'd almost love to see, and again, I'm proud. I would have loved to have seen it back then, but even nowadays, if Morpheus was like, okay, I'm gonna get a bunch of rubes that want to learn about dreams, and I'm gonna basically build my own team, and they're all gonna have dream-based abilities, and we'll call ourselves the Dream Team, and we'll go and finally finish off Moon Knight.
Yeah, no, exactly. And there are some allusions to Fist of Khonshu where Morpheus turns up again. So we're talking later on. He kind of has some acolytes there from memory. I think it was issue 2 or 3. We covered that, and we did an audio reproduction of that particular issue, I remember. So yeah, Morpheus is known to pull strings, to kind of, he's quite a bit of a leader in that regards, a cult leader. What I love immediately from this, if we go to the great maestro Sienkiewicz, I love how he instills this horror element straight away with Morpheus. I mean, he is a horrific character, but we get the opening, and what I love is Moench's attention to detail. So he talks about night terrors, pavor nocturnus, and he kind of gives us a scientific spiel about them, and the demographic of 4 to 7 year olds tend to have in them, and then the statistics of the percentage of 12 to 14 year olds, that sort of thing. But all the while that's happening, Peter Alraune, a fully grown man, is having a night terror, which is and again, Moench gets into the science of it. He's saying that whereas a usual dream is regenerative, it actually gives rest to the body and to the mind, a night terror does anything but that. And it's almost like a different beast to what dreams are.
Right, it's sapping him of any restful energy.
Yeah, so I love this kind of, this take of Moench of really... By doing that, he kind of grounds it. He kind of gives that extreme believability, you know what I mean? Like, this is not just like Morpheus who looks like a bug and he can zap people. It's kind of like, no, these are night terrors and I'm going to use it, but this is what night terrors are. And it's just fascinating. I can imagine back in the day, night terrors would have been entertaining in itself because it's such a phenomenon, and it's real. So
yeah, and that's honestly was one of the stepping stones that led to Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff like that. And that was before. Could you imagine nowadays if they did if they had Morpheus did stuff, because there's people talking about sleep paralysis and sleep paralysis demons and stuff like that. Yeah. Could you imagine if they did a story with Morpheus and having somebody who, if he keeps them immobile and forces them to dream, they create sleep paralysis demons?
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah, because that is one of the worst. My sister had one of those bouts. I remember when we were young. And I think a lot of people associate that. This is on a huge tangent. Sorry, loonies. I think a lot of people associate that with alien abductions. Because that kind of dream that you're stuck, you can't move, and there's someone in the room, and they're examining you or something. So there's that take. But how scary would that be? That you're awake and you cannot move, and you just feel scared about something.
And there's this like bug face, red eyed dude who's like, yes, make me more demons. Take more of my ebon energies. Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. So we get a bit of a recap as well on Morpheus here. But yeah, it's one of the I guess the main aspects is what we later find out. I actually thought that they were just, step back, Ray. One of the main aspects, Daniel, was what you were saying about like the Freddy Nightmare on Elm Street kind of thing, about this conjuring up stuff. And we're led to believe that this, at least for me, that this black silhouette of a person that attacks Moon Knight is a hallucination or something that maybe Morpheus has conjured up, similar to what we think of when Mark or Moon Knight comes across his alters and they start fighting him. And similar to when Frenchie and Marlene see a huge dragon coming out of the tunnel. So we get these incidences where it's kind of like as Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's, these hallucinations or what is real, what isn't. We get just in the panel before Peter Alraune saying that he has a dream that he sees Morpheus hovering outside his windowsill and he can hear the glass shattering. But when he wakes up...
Sleep paralysis.
The glass... Yeah, it shatters, but someone must have pushed it off the sill. So it's real. Moench is really kind of casting doubt on the readers because I think it's at Mark. Mark says, well, are you suggesting that you've got telekinetic powers now, Peter? Because how did that thing move? So it's really getting into the sci-fi of what our minds, our brains can do in this subconscious state.
Which is something I always loved with Doug Moench's stuff, because he always teetered on that line between the mystical and the scientific, just especially like, again, like you said, jumping ahead a bit, like in the Tales of Khonshu, like in these things, you see like all these guys going through these things like, was Khonshu really there? Is it just a statue? And all this stuff coincidentally happened around it. I loved that sort of ambiguity that went with Khonshu before they did the whole, bird-headed dude yelling, "Get moving, idiots!"
Yeah. Well, he's totally not. I mean, apart from the Tales of Khonshu, we don't even see the bird skull, of course. But he's totally kind of absent in this story. So we've got what happened. The last issue that we covered, 21, it was zombies. Basically, we're getting really like a supernatural bent now, and this time round, it's not anything like, it's not like a werewolf by night thing, or it's not a Dracula thing, but we're certainly getting horror, like psychological horror elements with that regards. Another case in point, we see when Moon Knight is giving chase to this silhouetted character who, spoilers, is Peter Alraune, being controlled by Morpheus. But we get this green sequence, Daniel, which I'll call it the green sequence, and what horror movie wouldn't be? What horror movie? What am I trying to say? Wouldn't be a horror movie without
be complete without a green sequence.
Yes, well, I was about to say, and a green clown or a clown.
Oh,
so we get
clown.
So we get a clown who kind of looks like...
Mr. Sienkiewicz, you have given me nightmares with that freaking clown, and I need compensation.
Well, he reminded me of the clown from Zodiac's crew, who later gets decapitated.
Yes.
He's got the same sort of setup. But, I mean, anyway, it's kind of generic horror, but it still kind of works. We're talking about 1982 as well, so,
and what was interesting is, like, they kind of it's, like you were saying, like, this wasn't like Dracula, this wasn't Werewolf by Night.
Mm.
This was kind of transitioning into that new era of horror where we had, like, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on
Yeah,
Elm
good point.
Street,
Yep.
Hellraiser,
Yep.
all of the other Halloween movies with Michael Myers. We were
Yep.
like, Marvel kind of predicted how horror was going to go for the 80s, which is, again, shows just how good of a writer, Doug Moench is.
Well, I mean, he certainly has strong ties to horror. I'm just casting my mind back, those years ago when I was privileged enough to chat with him, and he did start off writing horror comics. I do remember he said so. That's how that's his flavor, and you see a lot of writers these days. Who are predominantly, they do lean towards horror. Cullen Bunn, I know he's very much into horror. Benjamin Percy, who's doing Wolverine, but more notably Ghost Rider, and is giving it that horror kind of element, which he seems very comfortable to do. A lot of writers are really well tuned into that, and Doug Moench is no less, I think. But just injecting that into the Moon Knight story, it's great because again, he's so multifaceted in that sense. We don't even have any Egyptian. There's no connection to Khonshu at all in this issue, apart from the backup story. But anyway, so again, we get more hallucinations through here. A huge snake. I thought this was interesting. I thought it was pretty cool. Moon Knight gets battered by the snake and Marlene. This is the figment, of course, of Marlene, part of Moon Knight's head. She says, "Oh man, I guess I'll take care of it myself," which I think is a nice little, I don't know, might be an inside joke from Doug Moench because Marlene has been known to save the day, more than one occasion.
Or just completely jump into a situation like, I'll help, and then she ends up captured like, Mark, I need help.
Yeah, true, that too as well. Well, she does walk into the jaws of this snake, so that's pretty kind of reckless. But so while again, I'm just sticking with this main aspect of these hallucinations. There's a huge sequence here of Moon Knight chasing this silhouette, aka Peter Alraune, and that's where he comes across his own alters as well. And this is the cover. We should have mentioned the cover, which is a pretty striking cover, I think, of Moon Knight facing his alters coming out of mirrors. Some would argue that influenced, or maybe not, because it's quite, that influenced some of the visuals in the TV show as well. But having said that, it's pretty, I mean,
it's
not to say terrible,
there,
it's generic.
Not.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah.
It's like saying, oh, hey, this comic covers Moon Knight on it, and Moon Knight's in the show.
Yeah, true. It's probably a bit of a reach there, old Ray. But but people did remark on it, that cover. When we saw the trailers and stuff, I remember distinctly a couple of Moonies saying, "Oh, look, issue 22. It's kind of touching on that." So, you decide, I guess, Loonies, after looking at the cover. But yeah, so it's all about these hallucinations, and what I found really cool at the end, it's Moon Knight just fighting mannequins, which so he must have found himself in a department store, and he just bashing mannequins.
Could you just imagine the security guards like coming in, like one's coming in, is like, oh, hey Fred, I brought you coffee. What's going on? Like the guards just sitting there, just like, I don't even know how to describe this dude.
Yeah, exactly.
So you heard about that new superhero Moon Knight, right? Yeah. He just busted through the front of the store, and now he's fighting a bunch of mannequins.
And he's shouting, "I'm me, I'm Moon Knight," to these mannequins.
Yeah, like, wait, what? He's fighting? Are the mannequins possessed or something? Is it an evil wizard? No, dude, I think he's just tripping on acid. Well, should we call the cops? Are you kidding? Look at how he's dismembering those mannequins. I'm not going out there. Well, all right, here's your coffee. We'll just watch. Okay.
Exactly, yeah. Is he carving the face off one of them? That's like, that's terrible. But I mean, another thing, awesome. Just as we're kind of like, I'm just flicking through some of the pages here, just bouncing to art as well, Sienkiewicz. And I know your take on the art, I'm sure, Daniel, is probably very akin to mine. Again, we see the dexterity of Moon Knight here. He's got a kick that he literally does the splits, kind of a standing splits in the air. He seemed. I got the impression. Yeah, I got the impression from all the fight scenes that he was always going to win it. He's always prepared and he's kind of on top of everything. So I really love the action sequences again from Sienkiewicz, and you see these things that we have mentioned before in his layouts. Just some use of angles to promote direction and movement. Then you got different looking panel borders to create different sort of effects. I mean, these again staples that a lot of artists do employ, but it's how you use those techniques, and I think Sienkiewicz does them really well.
Like really next to like early Todd McFarlane, Bill Sienkiewicz is one of my favorite artists when it comes to just the standard, and we'll put that in air quotes there, panel layout for a page, because it's never standard. He always finds, like, especially like the one page here, you have the bottom panel bleeding in to the top panels there, just showing how it's like encroaching in. And what like Peter Alraune is going through, just that is so beautifully done, and you really don't see that anymore with a lot of like the contemporary comic artists. They're becoming very formulaic. We need more Bill Sienkiewicz's and Todd McFarlane's doing like these nice epic pages, sometimes even 2-page splashes, because it's just like everything's going to feel like it's just falling into the same thing.
Yeah. And look, just going on those points for you about the art, I think it's brilliant. Like those last two panels, the ones that kind of overlap each other, I just love how, for want of a better term, how the camera is positioned in it, where it's a real close-up of Morpheus. But then to get to the last panel, he kind of, the camera will pan and he turns and he shoots the young guy from behind. But just a really nice sweeping movement that is just suggested, because these are essentially static panels, right? We're not watching moving things, but it's just the way that stuff like that and the sense of movement that Sienkiewicz considers for the reader is really, really cool. Really do enjoy it. Again, you're talking about layout, overlaying stuff. This silhouette is essentially all black except for his eyes. I love it how he kind of overlaps panels and the use of negative space. So he's beyond the panel that Moon Knight is in, and the background of Moon Knight is just like this light that is shining towards the camera. Really cool, really fun stuff.
Yeah. Or Moonlight.
Moonlights, absolutely. One of the other things I just wanted to touch upon as well, which I did mention, and it's a slight like quibble on my behalf, it was that I just found it really I guess unorthodox, and I was a little surprised that in the last panel here, basically essentially at the end of the story, this is where we get a whole heap of, I guess you could say, like exposition.
Just a huge exposition dump by Morpheus.
And it's the danger of doing that is that it could seem that like the writer's run out of space and he's just like blah. He's just blurted the rest out because he had to tie up a whole heap of loose ends, and Moench had to. I mean, we're at this stage where there was still a lot of unanswered questions. Like Peter Alraune, what the hell? Why? He's revealed. It is a huge shock, but there's no reasoning behind it until we get the monologue by Morpheus. I don't know. What did you think of that ending? Like,
it veered a little bit into the cliched, like, oh, Mr. Bond, you have found my lair. Allow me to explain my evil plan to you in great detail while I swivel. It kind of went into that realm a little bit, but again, because it's Doug Moench, he pulled it off in a way that still gave you like you kind of felt like you were getting a bit of an exposition dump, but like it wasn't super forced in a sense. Like you can imagine like Morpheus is just sitting there somewhere watching this unfold, and like he would just be talking to himself because he is nutty cuckoo like that, and he would monologue to himself.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very, I've got to say, a very brave thing to do, because as you were explaining that as well, Daniel, you can get, I guess, similar scenarios, but even then there would be at least maybe that last page where it kind of establishes it and they explain it. We literally get this in the last panel with a headshot of Morpheus in the background overlaid by Moon Knight walking away with Peter Alraune. Like, you cannot get any later than that in an issue.
Yeah.
To dump some exposition. But I agree with you. It's not a game changer. It's not like a deal breaker, in that sense for the issue. It's just something that is kind of apparent. And yeah, unfortunately it does make you kind of stand up and notice like it, because it's just so weird. But other than that, I can't really fault too much of it. I really dug this. It was, I've been probably similar to you, Daniel, reading copious comics, regularly, like whether it is I'm reading through some epic collections or your regular floppies or some back issues. I'm pulling them out and I'm reading them. There's something about coming back to a Doug Moench story where, I don't know, he does fill the page with dialogue, never, I think, overly, but you know that you're going to get a meaty story. And when I saw it, I was kind of like, yes, and I kind of hung on each word, and I really ate it up. I thought it was really, really cool. And the stuff that Moench talks about, I mentioned about him knowing about the night terrors. He also talks about, and I'm going to really struggle to find it here as I bring it up, he talks about the brain as well, and I'm assuming it's correct. I'm not going to, I haven't investigated, but he talks about these medical terms for the brain, where like dreams come from and everything. I just really appreciate that. Whether or not it's totally accurate, he's actually he's set a platform, and he's kind of made this tone in the book that this is really based in
reality.
What we know is reality. So, no, gotta love it. But just this was full. As you can see, people with the video, Sienkiewicz as well. He doesn't skirt around with it. He fills the pages. Like we got here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And what usually on average, Daniel, what would it be? About 6 panels per page?
Yeah, usually about 6 panels per page. Yeah. And then again, from like a writer's point of view, I'm just like, okay, how many panels do I want to break down this page? Like, do I want to do 8? I think I may be pushing it. Maybe I'll just cut it back and then I'll move this to this page. Yeah. So again, I can understand from Doug's point of view, is like he did probably had all these great ideas laid out, and he's like, okay, and then, oh crap, I'm at the end of the book. One big panel, exposition dump. There we go.
Yeah, no, absolutely as well. I'm just looking at these pages, and seriously, on average, it exceeds 6 on average. We're looking at 7 to 9 panels per page. So this is chock full of stuff, and not only that, but you get decent amount of dialogue throughout all. But as I said, it's not. I don't believe it's overly written. It was just a really enjoyable read. How about yourself? Like, before we give this like a mark, what would you?
Again, there are 2 writers up until Jed MacKay came along, because that man is an absolute treasure and he must be protected at all costs to write our comic books. Like, for me,
Agreed.
My 2 favorite Moon Knight writers were Doug Moench and Warren Ellis, because with Doug Moench, you had he would do enough dialogue and it wouldn't interrupt the flow of the story. And then you had Warren Ellis, who did barely any dialogue when he did his issues. If you look at those, it was very much just a lot of just art, not a lot of dialogue to it, but you still felt like you were getting a lot of the story, even without Mark saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
And both those writers, I felt, had a very nice balance where they were giving you a good story, and either they gave you enough dialogue or just a little bit less.
Yeah, it's certainly 2 very different ways to craft stories. I felt Ellis wrote very well, but I think he gave Shelby a lot of opportunity to let his art shine, and it certainly does. It's one of my favorite runs as well. I think here with Moench and Sienkiewicz, they're both, full on firing on both. I'm not saying that Warren Ellis isn't, and not, but like Moench is doing his stuff. He's bringing the writing, like with the written word in there, but Sienkiewicz is also bringing the visuals in there. So this is such a strong run, I think. It's really
that's why it stood the test of time, even to this day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, any other final thoughts? Any other final notes from here that you'd like to raise?
Again, looking back at this, I'm like, man, I really want to see Morpheus kind of put together his own wrecking crew with like people with different dream powers now. Yeah. Like I'm like seeing it out, I'm like, oh my god, that's so awesome. I want that. I want it now. Yeah. Judd McKay, if you're listening, Dream Team, do it.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Look, I wouldn't say no. A couple of freaky things I thought. Morpheus, I think I've titled our episode along the lines, he's got no eyelids, so he's comatose, but his big bulbous eyes are open. It freaks out the intern or whoever that young fella is. We get, and again, this is Moench, we get the family of Moon Knight around, I mean, albeit in differing roles. We get Marlene and Frenchie. Crawley is in there still. Jenna is still in there. We still see Jenna's diner. We still have enough to see Jake Lockley, at least to begin with. And albeit Dream Phantoms, we do see Stephen Grant and Mark Spector. Yeah, so we get everyone kind of in here, it's just really nice to see. And I'm not saying that we are missing that in, say, the current run, because I think what Jed does so well is he's got his own family with Reese and Soldier and Tigra now as well. Yeah. So that really makes, as much as Moon Knight is a lone wolf, it really just makes it the comic book. You got the supporting cast. So again, this is a shining example of that from Doug Moench. I guess finally, I'm just quickly looking. I think that's about it. I mean, the big twist was Peter Alraune.
How?
Yeah, well, let me take you to the last panel. But so really good. Daniel, if you would give it out of 10, what would you give this comic?
I'd say I'd give this a 5.5.
Out of 10?
It's a nice middle ground.
Oh, okay.
Because it's a great story and it leads to a great build-up for the next issue. So you want to get that next issue so you figure out what's going on. Because even with Morpheus doing his exposition dump, you're still like, well, but how?
Yeah. True. Very true. That's all right. You surprised me there slightly, Daniel. That's okay. I, as I said before, I really did enjoy this, more so than some of the other Doug Moench issues as well. So I gave this a huge, big, beautiful yellow man. I give this an 8 out of 10. This, although it has I do quibble about the end, and of course, and you're totally right about it. This isn't finished. Like, we've got one more issue to resolve this. I think it just had all the ingredients of why I loved the Moench Sienkiewicz run, and it does it so well. I mean, again, there are some issues where Sienkiewicz actually brings his game, on a bigger platform than this, but this artwork is still so evocative and brilliant. And with Moench as well, it's a solid piece of storytelling. I mean, albeit that last panel exposition, it had me engaged. Like generally when we prepare for discussions like this, Daniel, and it's kind of like it's like homework, so to speak, to read it, because you're not reading it like willingly or just like because you're inspired to read it. You read it because you have to prepare for the show. Sometimes that can seem like, okay, well, this is so different because compared to a comic that I want to read like now because I just want to. I was like captivated with this from beginning to end. And yes, I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
And what's really interesting is because I actually have this issue in like 3 different like formats. I've got it in the omnibus, I've got it in the Essentials collection, and then I've got it in like the newer collection as well. Now, what's interesting is in the Essentials, they actually do all the Moon Knight comics in grayscale, black and white. They don't actually print them in color. And just seeing, especially like the Morpheus stories just in black and white, I think that almost makes them more terrifying because you don't know what's going on. You don't have color to define like everything that's happening, and that makes it a bit more horrific in my opinion. So like this issue, especially in like grayscale, really added to the tone of like the horror element to it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I've mentioned it before, either on this podcast or the other one, that Moon Knight stories work really well, I think, in black and white. I've got the Essential as well, and I've read that I've read all of them in black and white, and they just work. I mean, the other podcast that I do, To Know Her Is to Fear Her, about Spider-Woman, I've got the Essentials for her issues as well, and I read her volume 1 in black and white, and
nice.
There is something lacking though. Like, I mean, it's I don't know, maybe it's as dumb as the fact that Moon Knight is black and white. You know, he's jet silver, and you know that it works, but it just seems to. Whereas the likes of the tales of Spider-Woman, I guess you expect or assume more color because her costume and the characters that she surrounds herself with, her villains, they're a little bit more flamboyant.
Yeah, a very more colorful character, whereas Moon Knight literally lives in a world of black and white.
Yeah, and definitely with Morpheus, as you're saying, to give that horror element, it just works really well. So, yeah. So there you go, Loonies. I mean, we will still talk about Moon over Alamein, just briefly, but recommendation, I'm assuming from Daniel and myself for this issue, if not to at least check out this one to see where 23 kind of leads you to.
Hello, I'm Alan.
I'm Rebecca.
And if you're listening to this, then we recommend that you check out our podcast, the DCAU Podcast, where we watch the original DC animated movies, starting from Batman Mask of the Phantasm and continuing on to Justice League Dark, Apocalypse War, and beyond. And we will cover such heroes as Batman,
Superman,
the Batman,
Wonder Woman,
Victorian Steampunk Batman,
The Flash,
Batman Beyond,
Green Lantern,
Old Man Batman,
Martian Manhunter,
and plenty more versions of Batman.
lots and lots and lots of Batman.
You can find the DCAU podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else that you can get podcasts by looking up the DCAU podcast and subscribe today.
Hi, I'm Pax.
And I'm Abigail.
Welcome to Ghost Spider Groupies, a podcast dedicated to Gwen Stacy of Earth 65, also known as Spider-Gwen and Ghost Spider, where we review her comics, discuss news, and give our opinions about all things Gwen 65.
Right now, we are reading through Gwen's main solo series. Each week, we break down a new arc and discuss our and the listener's thoughts. Tune into each episode and come on this journey through the character's history with us, available wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Daniel, Tales of Khonshu, this was a backup story as well, written by Zelenetz, Alan Zelenetz, so the guy that will go on to write Fist of Khonshu. What were your general thoughts, on this tale?
I thought it was very nice because it was it was almost like a palate cleanser in a sense, because first you had this nice horror story and then you're jumping into like a World War II story, very Sergeant Rock feeling like, come on, we've got to storm the sands, man. And just again seeing how not even really having Khonshu there, but like he's just a presence felt in this story. And just that whole ambiguity to him, which I just absolutely loved, because it made you question everything as the reader. Like, is Khonshu real? Is he not real? Just absolutely loved it.
Well, I mean, that's it at the source, isn't it? I mean, and that's what kind of drove a lot of discussion, say, for Khonshu and Moon Knight, and the dynamic that a lot of people liked, whether Khonshu was real or not. This is pretty much a story to embody that. I did find it strange that it was like a soldier's army kind of story, because the other Tales of Khonshu, again, was very horror-based, off the back of issue
like Tales
20.
of the Crypt and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, but needless to say, that, I mean, of course, you can have different genres as a backup. It doesn't have to be the same. So generally, for listeners, there's a soldier. He writes back and forth to, I'm assuming, his sister, because he refers to their mum. Give a kiss to mum for us. So either that or they are partners. And but anyway, they come across the tomb, which I found very cool in the fact that you see the Doctor Strange emblem there. I don't know if you saw that as well. So there's a little bit of an Easter egg.
No kidding.
Yeah,
I don't think I ever noticed that.
Yeah, just on the
that is totally the seal of Ashanti.
The seal of Ashanti. Yeah. So they come across. And so there are some letters, kind of like your very old school kind of war tales, but they come across this and they see Khonshu, this weird looking chap. These are English soldiers. Sorry. So so basically there's this huge battle. The Germans sow their devil's garden for destruction, a whole lot of landmines. This battle over Alamein, which again, I'm going to lean on Josh or any other people who are into their military history as to what exactly happened. If that it gleans more significance from this tale than anything, maybe like did that battle, did the mines just mysteriously detonate, and their kind of Zelenetz is working this to, it was Khonshu, it could be something like that. But yeah, for sure, the Germans and the British, they battle. Some of them get splattered or boomed to smithereens. But there is a moon hanging full in the sky. It's low. And then with the visage of Khonshu, the landmines detonate, and that enables the British to find passage through, I guess, this battlefield. So, and then the question is, because you see the statue at the end. Again, this is a shortened format as well, so it's hard to give it a full rounded story. But that's the essence of it, whether or not Khonshu has helped them. But yeah, I found this, decent. It wasn't. Actually, I preferred the previous one because it had that kind of Tales of the Crypt element about that guy being stuck in the sarcophagus.
The sarcophagus, yeah. I just love that, and then there's just Khonshu, and you can almost tell the statue's looking a little smug there, like.
Yeah, exactly. So, as mentioned, this is the second and I believe the last of the Tales of Khonshu. I like these backup stories. I wish they do bring them back, not to the detriment of the full main story, but they are fun, So, if you were to mark this, Daniel, would you give this any particular mark?
I mean, for as short of a story as it was, you did get a lot of meat to it, as it were. Mm-hmm. I would definitely give this like a 7.
Okay. Yeah, look, I'd give it a little bit less. I gave it maybe a 6. The art was great. I really enjoyed the art, actually. The short format didn't help, but I don't know. I just liked the influence of Khonshu in that previous tale seemed to be a lot more. It seemed to be a lot more mischievous, and yeah, exactly. And it was just crafted a lot better. Here, I mean, Khonshu, the statue turns up, some landmines go off, and that potentially saves, But why is he siding? Anyway. Yeah. So it was a fun little tale.
Because even Khonshu hates fascists. That's why.
Exactly. Loonies, it's not too late. We haven't got any feedback. I was going to go to quotation mark, but there's no feedback. It's never too late. Shoot us a line. Let us know what you think about both stories. I'd love to know more about the battle in Alamein, apparently. Tell us about your love or hate of Morpheus. That would be really, really cool. Anyway, so Daniel, a huge thank you for coming on board.
My pleasure as always.
It would be remiss of me not to mention again and to ask if you can please share with the Loonies where they can find you, where they can find your fine work as well.
Oh, you can find everything Fringe Knight related on our Facebook page, our Instagram page, and our Twitter page. Just look for the Fringe Knight official, and then just on Facebook, just look for the Fringe Knight, and from there you can find links to all of my pages on Patreon and my Indie Planet, where you can get digital or physical copies of my oh so awesome comics, if I do say so myself there. And especially pay attention to our Patreon, because we always got fun stuff that I'm posting on there. Right now I'm doing a series of short story pulps that tie in between issues that I'm posting to kind of give a little bit more lore into the world of the Fringe Knight.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm going to go even further, Daniel, and say that all those links to the Fringe Knight, Facebook, Twitter, Patreon page, Indie Planet, it'll all be in the show notes. So easy for you loonies to go check it out. And again, I do urge you, I do mention every show, patreon.com/FringeKnight27 is where you can support Daniel's fine work. But as mentioned, there are links within there as well to lead you to his other social platforms. By way of, I'm just going to shout out again, just because I want to, Frank the Think Tank, he and his nephew, Pablo Candy Bar, are doing great work over their new podcast, I Want to Fight It. So they're coming out every Wednesday, where Frank and Pablo discuss a mythical creature, or could be comic book character, comic book villain, or cryptid. What is a cryptid, Daniel? I'm probably really stupid, but what is that?
That's sort of like the new term for like creatures that are not in any sort of genus of like the known animal family. So we're talking like Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, the alligator people, Mothman, like the creatures that do seem to more and more, like, it's becoming harder for people to deny that they exist.
Okay.
But they can't really put them into a specific, like, they can't say like Sasquatch is like an ape or something, because he's not really an ape, he's not really man,
Gotcha. It's like in the old days, it's just like a pure monster, right? Like just a creature. Awesome. Well, I mean, yeah, check it out. They're doing great stuff. They're up to, as the time of this recording, they're up to episode 3. And they've fought some strange things. I was listening to episode 2, Daniel, and they were fighting, I think, a cryptid. It was like a giant snapping turtle. There's a legend of, kind of an urban legend, I think, of this particular. I can't remember I can't remember what it was called, but yeah, a snapping turtle. It's pretty cool. Next phase, Loonies, we'll be jumping back. I think it's time for a new comic book. So it'll be a Moonshine. So look out for Jed McKay's latest offering, issue, help me out here, Daniel, 16, is it? 17, 16?
Yeah, 16.
16.
Chinatown.
Chinatown. So that should be exciting. We'll definitely be covering that. We'll be doing a live stream because it is a new comic. And fingers crossed, I think I do have the power of Chad joining me. So just got to confirm availability. But that should be fun too. As always, I'd like to thank the Patroonies, and I will put this up on the screen because I keep on forgetting. So a huge thank you to all our patronies from differing tiers, gives you differing, I guess, producer titles. So we have executive producers there: Odin Saw, Drew Tomes, Daniel Doing, Frank the Think Tank, Derek O'Neil, and Justin Osgood. Co-producers as well: Wayne Hunt, Josh Johnson, Anthony Sitko, Michael Siebert, Russell Moran, Mario DiGiacomo, Matthew Howell, and Jonathan Sapsted. So thank you so much, everyone, for supporting us. And you too can become a Patreon member. Just check out patreon.com/ITK Moon Knight. A big shout out to our principal sponsors again. Odin Sword, he does a Drinking Marvel podcast. As mentioned, Frank the Think Tank, I Want to Fight It podcast. Daniel Doing, you've seen the fine gentleman. You've heard his dulcet tones, creator of Fringe Knight. Again, you can support him on patreon.com/FringeKnight27. Drew Tombs, his music on soundcloud.com/Tombs or Lurk Music with a ck.bandcamp.com. CLZ Comics at collectors.com, just for a small fee. They're partnered now with Cover Price, that's cover without an R, and they have all the up-to-date market prices for your comic book collection. It's pretty handy. And finally, use the code MOON and you get 20% off the Dreamland Comics store. All the links in the show notes. You can find us, drop us a line on email, feedback at itkmoonnight.com. Our website is itkmoonnight.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Links in the show notes or up on the screen as you see as well. And finally, a big thank you to all our patronies. Big thank you to the collective, all the collective members. They're doing some great work there. Big shout out to Brian Biggie from Inner Demons. You are a gun. And of course, Dave Finn from Dread or Dead, the Judge Dredd podcast. So yeah, Daniel, my fine sir, thank you so much. Hope you have a grand day.
Well, I thank you there, High Priest of Khonshu Ray. I hope you have a fantastic lunar cycle as well.
Thank you so much. And everyone, as always, we'll catch you next week. But until then, may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night. Catch you later.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.